Game of Thrones, Alabama, Atlantic Gold getting taken out, gold breaking down, Bitcoin 8,000 now 7,000, celebrity cookbooks, a lot going on. The Squirrel Lady is going to trial. This is episode 19 of Bizarro World. I am Gerardo Del Real along with my co-host, Mr. Nick Hodge. Nick, how goes it?
You threw me off a bit with a little different of an intro there. I like to mix it up. It's good. Cha-cha.
Diversity is the spice of life. Diversity will be a very, very relevant topic in our conversation today. Obviously, it's a spin on variety is the spice of life, but hey, mission accomplished.
I like it. Keep me on my toes.
I like it. Let's start with the markets. We apparently have a deal between Canada and Mexico on the NAFTA front. We do not have a deal between China and the U.S. As a matter of fact, that appears to be escalating. It hasn't done wonders for the market. Gold is trading around the 1275 level as we speak. And majors and mid-tiers continue. Oh, yeah. That's you and everybody else in the market right now. Where do we start, Nick? Nobody gives a fuck about juniors except for the majors and the mid-tiers that are taking them out at substantial premiums.
Well, let's start there. Gold continues to be range-bound. S&P continues to be range-bound. We might not even have to talk about them on a weekly basis until we get some sort of direction, some sort of technical direction. The 232 thing is interesting. The trade deals sort of, with Mexico and Canada getting resolved because it immediately makes me think of uranium and how that 232 thing could play out, which Trump is due to make a decision on because, we've discussed various options as to how that could play out and if there could be exemptions for Canadian companies. And based on what happened today with the steel stuff, it looks like there could be exemptions for Canadian companies. So I look at it through the uranium lens. I haven't really thought about it too much as in the broad market sense, but those are my quick thoughts.
I like your quick thoughts. I should say congratulations. You provided subscribers of, I believe, Early Advantage, or was it Wall Street Underground's Atlantic Gold? Pretty substantial profits there.
Yeah, Wall Street's Underground profits. I wanted to talk about that, and I wanted to talk to you about that because my memory is already failing me, and I wanted to talk about that on the podcast. But yeah, Atlantic Gold was just taken out for, in Canadian terms, I think it was 800 million, all said and done when you count in everything, something like that.
That is correct.
$2.90 a share. And so, I pat my chest a little bit. I recommended the stock at 90 cents in 2016. We doubled our money and we sold that. And then we bought back in and we doubled our money again, more than doubled our money at the 290 price. And so it's been a quality story the entire time. It's been a stock of the week, I believe, on this podcast. We've talked about Atlantic Gold and its leadership and Stephen Dean and Maurice Ballinger. And I think I even gave an award to its corp dev IR person, Sean Thompson. So it's no secret that I've been a champion and very vocal about the company. And just a side note, it's been very funny the past week to see everyone that's been a champion and vocal about the company for the past 3 years that just fucking weren't. But okay.
Oh, you noticed that too? I want to congratulate my subscribers who booked a 200% profit on the accidental buyout of Atlantic Gold that I've had on my books and never talked about for 3 years. But I digress.
Yeah, there's a couple people like that. So, yeah, I have been out there. We talked with Steven at Beaver Creek last year. I talked with him, in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, recorded interviews that I shared with my subscribers, real stuff that actually happens. And good. Yeah, it feels good to have a good real win that people were actually in on, and they're going to get shares in a new company now that is going to hold Atlantic's position in the Bulgarian asset that they just took a stake in not too long ago. And so, yeah, all good things. And it speaks to what we've seen recently in the market, which is how you sort of introduced it in that major gold operations need quality operations, reserves, other projects to complement what they have going on to replenish their reserves, which they're mining out. And when you have an operation like Moose River Consolidated, which was the name of Atlantic's project, in a safe jurisdiction, Nova Scotia, with an all-in sustaining cost of something like the exact numbers escaping me, but $600 I think is pretty darn close to what it was. It almost makes it a no-brainer. And then if you want to talk about other themes in the market, well, who did this buyout? Well, it was another Australian company, right? Because the Australians continue to trade with a premium. Their capital hasn't been diverted into cannabis as it has here in North America. And so another Canadian miner stepping up to the plate to take out a Canadian. And I think we'll see more of that.
It should be noted that the buyout came at a 41% premium. And again, that stock, if I'm not mistaken, was already near 52-week highs. So even in this tough market, the assets that have grade, that have good margins, that are lower quartile in cost and have good exploration upside, it's very clear that the depletion of reserves is going to continue to motivate the mid-tiers and the majors to come in and buy these assets on the cheap. You and I have had private discussions about who we think is next. I sent a note out and put a trade out on a company that I think is a prime candidate. Any thoughts on your end on who you think could be the next buyout candidate? I asked you on Twitter, but I'll do it again here for the purposes of this podcast.
I'll give you my thoughts in a second, but there was a couple other things I wanted to say first about Atlantic. You mentioned them being taken out at a premium, and insider ownership has a lot to do with that. The management having interests aligned with shareholders. In this case, Stephen Dean and the gang owned over 30% of the company, 3-0. And so it behooves them to negotiate and sell the company at a significant premium and not close to market, as we've seen in some deals, and also for mostly cash. So all cash, essentially. I mean, you get to sell your shares for $2.90. The suitor didn't have to raise money. It wasn't contingent on any other thing. It was wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, give me the cash. And that's what happens when you have a management team who is going to get paid, right? I mean, they got paid not only on the having interest aligned with shareholders with 30%, but Stephen Dean was going to walk away with numbers escape me these days, Gerardo. I think $1.92 million if he sold the company or changed ownership. And so, of course, he wanted to make the best deal because he was a shareholder himself.
Good work all the way around. All very good points. And again, that's 30% insider ownership, not 0.30, as we've highlighted in the past with certain companies.
Alexandria Minerals just had to sell itself for 2 or 3 cents, I think it was. I'll have to put up a link to that. And the last thing I wanted to say about Atlantic Gold is that I apparently can't remember anything because I thanked you for introducing me to Sean Thompson, which would have been, I think, at the New Orleans conference in
2016.
Right. So,
yes,
but I guess you told me it wasn't you who introduced me to Sean Thompson, that it was, you said, I think Jordan and Tim, which would be Jordan Trimble of Sky Harbor Resources and Tim Termundi. Is that right?
Oh man, you are getting up there in age, and I'm older by 5 years. Come on, Nick. It was Tim and Jordan, our awesome, excellent production crew that was there. They actually vetted the opportunity. So all jokes aside, yes, I did introduce you to Sean. You were leading a group of investors to quality names and companies. I said, hey, Sean's got one. It seems smaller scale than I like, with not enough high risk exploration upside as I usually am attracted to, but you saw it clearly from day one. The two of you met, you recommended it shortly thereafter. The side story to that is Jordan and Tim were getting asked a lot of questions by people that thought they were also newsletter writers because they were hanging out with us. And so we gave them a list of questions that they should be asking a lot of the companies there. And so they actually went up to Sean and just started giving him the third degree. Who owns all the cheap shares, right? This will never be a mine. And I recall Sean squirming and saying, we're building it right now. We're building it right now. And Jordan just waving her finger and tapping the table saying, this will never be a mine.
It has all come back to me crystal clear. My apologies to Tim and Jordan. Yes, you're right. The lovely and wonderful production and video crew. So, gosh, that was funny. And as it turns out, they had actually great share structure. And great management and good jurisdiction, and management owned the papers. So they checked all the boxes for the initial due diligence questions. It's all coming back to me now, how time flies.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And congrats to that team. They did a phenomenal job in a very, very, very tough market of not just getting that built on time and under budget, but they also grew the asset. And again, still lots of exploration upside. So kudos to you. Congrats to your subscribers. Kudos to Tim and Jordan. And congrats to Sean Thompson and the team over there. It's good for them. It's good to see the good guys get a win.
Exactly right. You asked me who was next. I replied to your tweet with either B2 Gold or K92. K92 we've talked about on this podcast before, and we have both recommended. And I'll tell you, I had an interesting phone call with someone that we both know yesterday who said, and I was actually giving him shit because he was giving me shit. And I said, hey, look, I had a buyout this week. When was your last buyout? And, and he says, you know what? He was like, I was scratching my head about that because, and he's talking about Atlantic Gold. He was like, I'm involved with a company, and you and I both know this company called Almaden Minerals. And, I had a look at the feasibility study, and on paper, the Ixtaca project, which Almaden controls, compares, very favorably or comparably to the Moose River Consolidated project, at least in its earlier stages before all the recent drilling and Stephen expanded it. And he was saying, the Almaden is trading cheaper now than before when they made the discovery, and the stock had gone to, I'd have to look at a chart,
50 cents to $5. Yep.
Yeah, 50 cents to $5.
I rode that wave.
I
rode it back too.
has pulled all the way back to 60 cents, which is probably actually cheaper than 50 cents because I'm sure there's more shares issued now than there were before when they made the discovery. And so I don't know what I'm saying other than Almaden sitting there with 4 million ounces, half silver and half gold, and is get very favorable economics, a $310 net present value after taxes, is close to getting a permit, has a $70 mill, and is sitting there with a $50 million market cap. And so timing matters. If Almaden had been building this project in 2016, like Atlantic was building their project, we would probably see Almaden getting taken out at this point in time. But instead, we're probably going to have to wait until the next cycle to see Almaden get taken out. And so, again, I don't know what I'm saying other than Almaden is very cheap.
Almaden is very cheap. And another point to highlight with Almaden is the exploration upside. Over 90% of that property is untouched. Morgan Poliquin, the CEO and president of Almaden, is one of the best geologists in the field, hands down. Track record of discoveries. He explores. That's what he likes to do. He's hired a gentleman, a very experienced gentleman, to help get the financing and the mine built. But as far as exploration goes, Morgan is one of the best out there. I don't think it's a coincidence that the last time they did a step out hole, they hit about 1.5 kilometers away from the main deposit. And I think there's going to be more deposits to discover there. So I hope you are right and that they are not taken out in this cycle. I hope that the permitting goes as we expect it to go, and that they get their permits early next year, hopefully, and that they start to build that mine while simultaneously exploring, because it went from 50 cents to $5. It was a round trip, and I think it can be a round trip back to $5 in the right market. So that's one to look for.
Good, because I'm getting tired of buying cheap mining shares. There's only so much capital, Gerardo.
We had the conversation off air. We're participating in a couple of private placements, and sadly doing so at much cheaper prices than the last time we wrote checks for those same companies. So again, in a better market, we're going to be feeling very intelligent about all the warrants that we stacked up and how that worked out. But in this market, it requires patience. And again, it underscores how much people should celebrate the Atlantic Gold takeout, because, hey, if you can get a 200% plus win in this market, that's impressive. Congratulations.
People are almost tapped out, though. You and I are talking about, not having capital to invest in deals much longer. We're writing checks at lower prices. Everyone is talking about the talk that Kai Hoffman gave about the state of mining finance and how there are so many fewer deals being done this year and so much less capital being raised comparatively to previous years when it comes to mining companies that are listed in Canada. And I think you're living through the capitulation, right? I mean, this is what you want to see, for however painful it is, and for as much as all the resource pools want the prices of the metals and the stocks to go up, you got to have the capitulation, the drying up of capital, the complete and utter disdain for the sector before it can truly reach its bottom and turn around. And so I wrote a bit about this yesterday, but you're reaching the point now where everybody's like, fuck that, man. I'm not writing another check, including people that you and I know. And we're getting to the point where the only checks that are getting written are those from very deep pockets to keep only the most quality operations run on a lean budget. And so I think it's a good thing. I mean, it doesn't feel good at the time to read how far down the financings are and how few are being done. But if you look through the trees at the forest, you can tell to yourself, well, good, some of these shit companies can finally not be financed and we can move on to the next leg of the cycle, which is what everyone needs to make money.
This type of capitulation is where fortunes are made if you are disciplined and patient enough to continue to add to the better names. That obviously requires people to have diversified income streams, right? This is not the part where you back up the truck or you bet the farm on one position. Spread it out a little bit, everybody. Make sure that you have multiple sources of income. This shouldn't be how you plan on taking care of your credit card bills if you have those, or your mortgages if you have those. This should be the time where you plant the seeds and you wait that year or so before you get to harvest those 10, 15, 20-fold gains. But they're absolutely coming. I mean, the valuations out there are just unbelievable. And to your point about people that we both know, we have some pretty deep-pocketed friends in the hundreds of millions of dollars that are fed up with the market. So when I see that, it screams capitulation. It's not fun right now, but add the best names and hang in there. It always turns. And man, I'll say this, the next bull cycle is going to be one hell of a cycle, because this has been a painful bottoming process.
I have lots of seeds planted. If I pick up my head and look over my monitors, I can just see my garden, and the couple of squash and zucchini are up right now.
Some weeds here and there.
No, fully rototilled the other weekend. We are currently weed free, although they will be back shortly.
I like it. Let's talk. I know you started to yawn, but I want to touch on it here for a little bit. U.S. and China. That trade war is actually intensifying. I keep saying it's not sustainable. Neither China nor Mr. Trump seem to give a fuck what I think, or anybody else for that matter. They're escalating it. How does this play out?
I have no idea. You have, I think, a keener insight into this thing than I do, and follow it a bit closely. But gosh, my opinion doesn't matter, like you just said, and I don't really have a cohesive one. The smartest thing I've read is that China knows it can't win. It just wants to make us feel a little like we're not so high and mighty for a little bit first. And so I think that the Chinese have to give in eventually. I couldn't tell you when.
I agreed. I don't think it's a coincidence that China sold the most U.S. treasuries in the last 2.5 years. I think that was a jab. I like to box, right? I think it was a soft jab. It's definitely not a body shot. It's definitely not, a hook. It's just a soft jab reminding the U.S. that it does have some wiggle room, some leverage, although I absolutely agree that in this case, the Trumpster has the bulk of the leverage on his side. I read an article that Larry Kudlow, who was brought in to help with negotiations, wanted to leave in the summer. He was asked to please stay through the negotiations, which indicates to me anyway, that they hope to have some sort of resolution within the next couple of months. I don't believe if this was something that was going to drag out another year or so, that Mr. Kudlow stays on. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. In the meantime, the dollar's holding up really well. It's pushing that 98 level again, keeping gold range bound. I've said the dollar has to rise alongside gold and the U.S. indices before I believe it's a gold bull market. Hasn't happened yet, but gold also hasn't broke down. So interesting stuff.
Well, I don't know how interesting given the yawn that I gave you early on, but important is the word that I would choose, and something worthy of following along, because it has obviously implications on the markets. Although I can't tell you without a crystal ball what those would be, but. And I'm just going to ramble for a second. I could see the trade war getting resolved, the market breaking out to all new all-time highs before it breaks down later this summer, which serves as the reversal for metal prices to go higher. I can totally see that.
Bitcoin. Do we want to talk Bitcoin? Every
I
time we
think we
talk,
have.
it goes
I
up. It
I
goes
think
up
we
another
had. Yeah,
1,000. Yeah, right.
I was going to say. I think we have to. Yeah, what do I want to talk about? Well, do you want to talk about it? Do you have anything to say?
No, I just want to talk about Frank Holmes real quick, and then I'll let you talk about Bitcoin. So I just I just watched an interview on kitco.com, which does a good job with the interviews, saying Frank Holmes was quoted as saying, "If you think Bitcoin can replace gold, then read a history book." I think the timing is curious, given the Hive debacle right now and everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we all talk our own book, but man, that's a hell of a pivot.
Well, he's got a gold company too, so he's playing both sides. I mean, which was just actually suspended for not getting its documents filed. So Mr. Holmes has a couple of issues on his hands.
High gold spot.
What's that? Oh, yeah, gold spot. Yep, exactly. And what am I going to say? So it went to $8,000. I'm talking about Bitcoin. It's still technically in a bullish, whatever you want to call it, formation or a trend. I think that we saw it sell off this week from 8,000 to 7,000. That looked like just a couple of big trades. I talked to some people about it this morning. It seemed like that was one person basically is the consensus getting out of the market, profit taking after a big run, which is got to be expected when anything goes up 100% in a month or two. And so, yeah, where does it go from here? Again, no crystal ball. I don't know, but we'll have to mention Hydro 66 again. They're still generating cash. And I'll echo what I said last week that, look, we've been in a broad-based bull market for 10 years. There's going to be some capital exiting soon. It's the longest bull market we've ever seen. And this Bitcoin thing could just be a little bit of that money anonymously wanting to get into quote unquote a haven, I guess. That's the best deduction I've been able to make so far. And that's how I see it.
It's a good one, and let's toot our own horn for a little bit. The first time we mentioned Hydro 66 to you all, it was trading at about 25 cents Canadian. It's up about 80-something% since then. It's pushing up right near the 50-cent level right now. And again, I think even at these levels, it's a pretty compelling speculation if we assume that the crypto market will continue in that bullish formation, which it appears so. So take a look at Hydro 66, everybody. It's a real business with real revenues, diversified clients, diversified income streams, and very leveraged to a rising Bitcoin price. We'll leave that there. Can we talk about the fuckery in Alabama?
These motherfuckers.
Well said. Go.
Look, I'm a libertarian. You shouldn't be messing with people's rights on either side of the aisle, whether that's, in the Second Amendment or that's for abortions, and certainly not when it's a female issue and an all-male legislature. And I can't believe the female governor signed it. And
say that again. Say that again, because that's the part that pisses me off the most.
I can't believe the female governor signed it. I woke up that morning and I was talking to my wife and I was like, there's no way she's going to sign this, right? And then she signed the bill. And so fuck you.
And say the part before that. Who actually is the legislator? Who is it composed of? Females, women that understand reproductive rights, women that need these services. Were these the people that were opining and voting to pass this law?
No, it was an all-male legislature. And so, I mean, just from a purely, rights libertarian standpoint, you don't tell people what to do with their bodies. People are always at will and have the right to decide what happens to and in their bodies. And yeah, this is pure fuckery. The people are gonna have to go out of state. I actually don't personally, but through my wife, know an abortion doctor in Alabama because my wife used to work in the women's health field in Maryland, and one of their doctors would fly in every week to perform procedures from Alabama. And so the law hasn't taken effect yet, as far as I know. I'm sure there will be contentions of it in court, and we all know what's going on. You've read the broader based headlines why this is. It's because there's now a conservative majority in the Supreme Court, and they think by putting in these right to life laws or these laws that outlaw abortion, that they can then some sort of leverage to get a Supreme Court case that will ultimately overturn Roe versus Wade. And I don't think that's going to happen, but what do I know? But this is certainly not a good thing from a right standpoint. And I can't imagine, like, who's calling for this, right? Like in the year 2019, where gay marriage is legal and we're accepting now of homosexuality, and the biggest religion in the United States is no religion at all. Like, who even wants these laws? Like, what constituency is like, yeah, let's ban women's rights? Like, what purpose does this serve? Like, what advantage do you gain, or what constituency does this help? That's what's lost on me. Like, what's the fucking point of it even?
It's the same group of old fucking men that, and this was a real thing on Twitter. Again, I joke about things being funny, not funny, but there was a thing earlier this week where a bunch of guys said that no woman would want to have enthusiastic sexual relations with her husband or something like that. You should Google that. I'll try to provide a link. It was absolutely hilarious. It's those people. It's those people. It's the people that are stuck in a time where they believe that although they don't have any kind of fucking clue about what a woman goes through, they have the right to tell a woman what she can and can't do with her body. And again, I don't think anybody on the planet says, abortions are fun. Let's make abortions the thing to do. No, I'm all for, education and prevention and all of that in a way that is absolutely respectful of ultimately the woman should decide what they are going to do with their own bodies. And you're absolutely right that this is going to be a Supreme Court issue. I think you are more optimistic on those justices than I am because of the way they have voted traditionally. They tend to lean right now. The majority goes that way. I would be pleasantly surprised if somebody broke with the party quota. I don't know. It's ugly stuff. Missouri just passed a bill that would ban abortions after the 8th week of pregnancy. And then the other thing that really pissed me off is simultaneously, the House just approved, the democratically led House just approved a sweeping bill expanding gay rights, which basically just says, hey, you can't discriminate against people for how they identify, their sexual orientation, et cetera, et cetera. Who opposed it? The same group of assholes that want to tell women what to do with their body. What did they say? And this part really pissed me off. They said that they opposed the bill for everybody to be treated equally, regardless of sexual orientation. They said that this was another example of government overreach. This on the same week as this shit going on.
I got all kind of thoughts. One is just as I've said, the left is going to out-left themselves, i.e., AOC calling for socialism and the banning of private schooling, etc. The conservatives are going to out-conservative themselves, especially on non-fiscal issues, that is to say, on lifestyle issues, because for fuck's sake, we all know everyone is not everyone, but the majority is fiscal conservative and social liberal. And so, you saw the tweet that I don't know what I did. I liked or retweeted or something that says, it's funny how the left thinks that laws are going to solve gun laws are going to solve mass shootings, and the right thinks that abortion laws are going to solve an abortion issue, and neither of those things are true. And that's something I've been telling people for years, and that I'm pretty sure I've said on this podcast. It's like, fuck the government, man. They don't know what's best. Just do what's best for yourself. Like, how does some fucking hick legislator in Alabama know what's best for a woman any more than some 20-some-year-old bartender from New York know what's best for the biggest economy in the world? Like, just look, people, put on your common sense hat, do what's best for yourself, and make yourself enough money that you don't have to worry about that shit.
Agreed.
Can I keep going? Because I'm
Fuck
ready
yeah.
to go now.
Go. Yeah.
So I saw this thing this week, and I've talked about this stuff before. There was a celebrity cookbook analysis this week. It was analyzing celebrity cookbooks based on how many animals would have to be killed to make all the recipes in the cookbook.
I don't think I'm supposed to laugh, but that makes me laugh. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
God, what a miserable life that journalist must have that had to put all that data together or even want to do that. And of course, you know, the point or the undertone of the article is that the cookbook that you had to kill the most animals for to eat was somehow bad. What else? I saw an analysis this week of SNL host for the past couple of years, and it was talking about how the host had been mostly male and mostly white. And what else did I see this week? I saw that the SATs were going to offer equality scores, and basically you get a higher score, you get a score assigned to yourself based on your socioeconomic status. So basically you get more points if you had to overcome some sort of perceived adversity. This is all fucking bullshit, people. I've talked about this before, about how you can't just add things up and say, well, that's not fair. Like, whether it's the amount of female actors in Hollywood movies, or the amount of colored actors in Hollywood movies, or the amount of females in the House of Representatives, or the fact that the female hockey league can't exist. Well, you know, sometimes things are just economics, and sometimes things are just as they are, and you can't count things up and point to them and magically make them better because pointing at things sometimes that aren't wrong. And maybe I'm not making sense, but what I'm saying is, just because you counted something up and you found that this cookbook had to kill 4 more cows than that book did chickens, well, why is the one cookbook inherently worse than the other one? Or just because the hosts of Saturday Night Live in 2003 were 80% male, like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? And pointing it out isn't going to make it better. And I say that because maybe something's not wrong. Like, maybe sometimes it's just the way it is, or sometimes it's the economics, or it's the trends of the time. And ultimately, sometimes it has to do with the bottom line, especially in the case of things like which movies people go see, and which sports franchises get to have a league. So look, if the movie that's popular in 2003 happens to be a movie which is starred in by a white person, well, that's the person, guess what, who's going to host SNL that fall. And so it just really riles me up when you just try to count things and point to that as a flaw in the system. And I get that some of this people will say, well, you're saying that out of fear because you're a white male. And to that, I'd say, go fuck yourself. My mom was born dirt poor in Italy. I'm a first generation immigrant. My mother wasn't even born in this country, and I'm sitting here a multimillionaire. So to tell me that you can't overcome adversity and that there's fundamental flaws in the system and that it's hard for people to make it. Yeah, it's fucking hard, but you know what? If you put in the work and you put in the time and you make the connections, you overcome that adversity and you become something, and you make something of yourself, or you learn a skill and then you exceed and you excel in that skill that you learn, and you rise to the top and you get a higher salary, or you start a business. And you know what? Millions of people have done that. So to sit there and say, I need a higher score because I come from a disadvantaged socioeconomic background, go fuck yourself.
I'll second that. And I'll say this, as also being, a first generation son of immigrants, came from nothing, right? To a much better standing in life, thankfully. I wouldn't want your fucking charity score. I don't need the charity score. Let me outwork you. Let me get in a position where I can have some upward mobility. And then when I get there, let me help provide opportunities for family members and friends so that we all know that the systems and institutions that were established, we talked about this earlier in the podcast, maybe the first couple of podcasts, were established by mostly males, all white males, right? That's the way it was set up. That's how the founding fathers set it up. This is an experiment in democracy, right? It's an experiment in our republic. It's a couple of 100 years old. It's up to us to change it, but asking for a handout or asking for any kind of non-merit based advantage seems hypocritical to what those same people are asking for. Does that make sense?
100%.
Good. So we agree on that. Now, we can still agree. We can still agree that, yes, the media can be sexist. The world can be sexist. There's a lot of racism to overcome. You know what? We started by talking about Alabama and Missouri and this ban. The bottom line is that if you're wealthy, right, you can travel anywhere and get an abortion. You can travel anywhere and get not just an abortion, right, because that's not just what we're talking about here, but you can travel and get good healthcare. You can have great options if you have the money to do so. So it doesn't affect rich people. It doesn't affect the well off. It really fucks the people that are on the lower end of everything. And with wealth inequality in this country being what it is, it really is an attack, a nasty, ugly attack on people of all colors and backgrounds, but socioeconomically disadvantaged people is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, it's it's the people elected to look out for you that are fucking you the most. And I hope people remember that when it's time to vote this time around.
What I want to say, I was once socioeconomically disadvantaged, and I just kind of went through that, how I rose above that. And,
yep.
I don't know if I'm wealthy now, but I certainly wouldn't qualify for, any of the student loan forgiveness programs that Elizabeth Warren is proposing, for example. And so, when I see politicians talking about wanting to change the rules to level the playing field, it definitely rubs me the wrong way, because no one forgave my student loans. I paid those fuckers off. You know what I mean? And I did it on my own. I made the money on my own, and I wasn't wealthy and I wasn't advantaged. And, taking it back to the abortion example, there was a time where I wouldn't have been in a position to travel out of state to get an abortion, or I wouldn't be able to go somewhere else to get health care. But I'm in that position now, and I operated in the system that everyone else did to get there. And so to change the rules in the middle of the game, to me, for what are perceived inequalities for some of the same things that I overcame without a change in rules, I just think is bullshit.
I'll say there's ways to, like gun control, like gun rights, like all things. I think there's intelligent conversations to be had about a more efficient, more practical, more transparent approach to everything, right? We can talk education, we can talk women's rights, we can talk reproductive rights, we can talk gun rights. I don't think it's simple and shut. This is how it's been, so this is how it should stay. But yeah, we got to pick our battles carefully. You can't, we've talked about fake outrage on this podcast before. You can't be mad about everything, and you can't complain about all of it. Pick intelligently, choose wisely, and advance the issues that are most pressing to you. For women right now, y'all are being attacked, and I don't really care how much money you have or what your background is. This is a clear attack, perpetuated by men on you, telling you this is how you're going to do what I want you to do, or not going to do what I don't want you to do. You're going to do it my way. That's the men talking. So again, I hope people remember that when it's time to vote.
Yeah, I think that the sentiments that I just echoed, a lot of folks are afraid to say, but sort of have similar opinions, especially white males in this country. And that's one of the reasons that you got Trump in 2016, and increasingly the reason I think you're going to get Trump in 2020. And this is coming from what I would say is someone who is a centrist, a libertarian who disdains both sides, and who I would like to say considers all facts and looks at a lot of things before concluding things. And Yeah, the silent majority, I think, is, and you and I are kind of talking about two different things
We are.
a little bit,
Yep.
but I think this backlash to the socialism and the forced diversity, and I don't want to say the attack of the white male, because it's not really an attack of the white male, but
No,
the white male is feeling marginalized, and he's going to vote that in 2020 for sure.
I do feel he's going to vote that. It's interesting to me that he feels that. Being that you have a president that speaks specifically mostly to white males.
Yeah, I think it's because it's amplified in the media and the Hollywood messaging that people see for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point you just made, because when we talk about, the candidates on the left, there's so many candidates that aren't calling for socialism and aren't calling for, $1 trillion climate saving bills, but those don't seem to get the attention that the others do. It's interesting, right?
Well, the middle rational ideas never do.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. I wonder how much shit we'll have to go through as a country before that levels out. Is it going to be, I mean, what's it going to be, right? Is it going to be another stupid war? I hear the war drums, Iran, all the posturing there. I don't think that ends well.
Yeah, I've been seeing that as well, and ultimately, I don't know what it's going to take to get us there, but it's hopefully getting closer. We're at the point now where basically corporations are media corporations I'm talking about are allowing or disallowing people on their platforms based on whether or not they agree with them politically. And of course, I'm talking about, people getting kicked off of Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, like people like Alex Jones and even some people on the, quote unquote extreme left. And so, I think we're in a dangerous place where we're silencing people that we don't agree with. We're not even letting them express their opinions, which I always think is a dangerous place to be in. And of course, I have to drop the name of the podcast. We are living in bizarre times. It's a bizarro world. What gets people there? I don't know. I've always said that when the cable stops working, right? When people are either unable to afford their cable bill or the TV gets shut off. That's a very pessimistic view, but I'm not sure what else gets the majority out in the streets as long as they can sit home and watch the shows.
How selective do you think America is about that socialism word? Because I noticed I was watching an interview with a farmer from Iowa. And he talked about how he voted for Trump, and he talked about how he voted for him, not because of his social views, but because of his can-do attitude, that he felt economically he would take the country in a better direction. And, he talked about how he's no longer on the Trump train because, frankly, Trump hasn't done anything to help the deficit. And now, the tantrums that he's thrown with China have led to this gentleman in Iowa, being in really, really tough predicament. I couldn't help but notice that immediately once, middle America started feeling the pinch and the pain, I forget how many billion, I think it was $8 billion in relief that's coming to the Midwest. And, I didn't see that described as socialism. I didn't see that described as a handout. And it's always curious to me. Again, we talked about how the polarizing opinions tend to be the ones that are that are played out in the media the most. But the narrative, the people that call the shots on the narrative and how they explain things. I mean, you either are for a handout or you're not for a handout, right?
Yeah, I'm with you. If the FAR bill is one of the most egregious forms of government waste and pork that there is. I mean, it's payola for the farmers. It's payola for the companies who support them, and I don't agree with that either. And that goes back to the media messaging and things like that, and how it's branded and how it's fed to the masses, right? And when we're helping farmers, nope, that's not socialism.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get smarter people and start digging a little deeper into some of this stuff and where it comes from. And again, I don't, I lean left on certain issues. I lean right on a lot of other issues, and I'm kind of like you, Nick. I'm more libertarian, I think, than anything else. But Yeah.
But they won't, Gerardo. But they won't because they can just vote, or at least they think they can just vote for the people who are going to erase their student loans and cap their credit card debt. And why should they research the issues, or why should they get smarter if the government is just going to promise to give them everything?
Yeah. Yeah. Bigger debate, right? Bigger debate. Both
Yeah,
sides. Both sides
a
do
much
it.
bigger debate.
Yep. Both sides do it. Neither side's right when it comes to that. And again, it's going to take some time, and it's going to be up to us to teach our kids to vote on ideas, not on people, not on parties. And that's obviously a generational thing that will not solve itself in one election cycle.
It's always, this is going to be a blanket statement, but I think I've talked about this before. It comes back to the family unit, whether you have $100 million or you have $100. If your parents are involved and they're getting you to your stuff on time, and they're making sacrifices, and they're getting you in clubs, and they're positive, and they're fostering you along, that's the most important thing. I mean, it doesn't matter to some extent, of course it does, but what neighborhood you grew up in, or what high school you came from. If you got it in your head, and you got it in your heart, and you got it in your family, you're going to do it. And the government is not going to fix that with any blanket social justice inclusion policy.
Agreed. Positive stories. Okay. We'll leave that there. I think we've had enough serious conversation for a bit. Let's talk about Squirrel Lady going to trial and Robert Kraft getting off again.
Oh, you talk about Robert Kraft. I'll tell you about Squirrel Lady, and then I'll give you a really positive story.
I just wanted to say Robert Kraft gets off again, right? So back to how things work in America, everybody. If you got the money and the right lawyers and the right connections, and the people you're supposed to know, and you contribute to the right causes, you can get away with almost anything. So Robert Kraft initially was arrested for solicitation of prostitution, is what it came down to. He was in a massage parlor. He was getting hand jobs. They got a video of him. It looked like he was done. There was talk about him being forced to liquidate his share or ownership of the New England Patriots because of how tough the NFL is on owner conduct. And of course, what I thought would happen, the Kraft, and kudos to his lawyers, but the Kraft attorneys were able to get a judge to rule that the video obtained, they didn't deny it, they said it exists, but it was obtained illegally. So because it was obtained illegally and they had to throw that out, there now is no case to be had. So not only will he not plead not guilty, charges are dropped, and he's good. He's good to go. Robert Kraft gets off again, and hopefully he picks better from here on out, right? You have a lot of money, Mr. Kraft. There's better ways to go about that.
There is nothing new under the sun. I think I have also mentioned on this podcast the Russian author Dostoevsky, who was writing about this stuff over 100 years ago, talking about how the trial gets put on trial and not the person or the act that's actually on trial. And he was speaking of rich Russians at the time. And so some things never change. Some things never change. Of course, this is what was going to happen. Of course, Bob Kraft was not going to lose his status in this world over a handy. I think we all knew that going into it.
A couple of handies, I think on the same day. But it was right before a conference final game. I mean, come on, man. So speaking of trials, Squirrel Lady is going to trial.
She said she pleaded not guilty. She said this is bogus.
Fucking bullshit.
We are going to trial on July 22nd. I might go. I'll keep you posted.
Oh, please. I can't wait. I love it. You said you had I'm going to get my Game of Thrones update because I didn't watch the last episode. But I know that the Thronies want a redo of it. I saw that on Twitter talking about people feeling entitled and, the spoiled generation. There was actually a whole thing, a petition that they wanted the episode redone because it wasn't satisfying. Before we get to that, and before we talk about that, I'd love to hear your positive story that you said was really, really, really positive.
So I got an email the other day from a person I didn't know, and it just said, hey, I know you run the Outsider Club, and I know you do direct mail marketing, and I see the promos you've been sending out. it named the publications, Junior Mining Monthly, The Wealth Warrior, The Crow's Nest, etc. I sort of can tell that the Crow's Nest marijuana promo is performing the best based on how often you promote it in your editorials and how often you send it out as a direct send. And these are all things that you have to be in the business to know. So I knew this person was real. And then it went on to say, clearly, I think this marijuana promotion is the best. So, and I think I can make it better. Here is a new lift letter, which is the thing you send out to get people to click on the promo. Here are 2 ads to put into an editorial. And here is an article that you can run to try to get people to click on that promotion. Here's all this for free. I took the initiative to do this, test it against what you're currently running, and I hope it's better than the things that you're currently testing. And so I said, and I replied immediately, how did you get my contact information? And this person said, I used Rocket Reach, which I had never heard of, but is very creepy. I'll put a link up and you can go check out Rocket Reach. But essentially, the Rocket Reach is a company that is billing themselves as being able to get you like any executive's contact information, like direct contact information. And clearly it worked for me because this person got my contact information. So anyway, that's not the point of the story. So
like that doesn't make me feel very good.
Right, exactly. So she says, and now I know it's a she. She says, I got your information from Rocket Reach. I am a direct response copywriter, and I'm looking to write financial copy. So I said, okay, let's get on a call. And she says, I can't call you. I'm out of the country. So this is getting more interesting now.
I love it.
Yeah. And so I say, okay. She says, can you Skype? And I say, yeah, I can Skype. When do you want to do it? And she says, it's getting late here now, but I can do it now. And I forget what time it was. It was like 1 p.m. for me. So I did some quick math and I was like, it's getting late. Well, where the fuck is this person? So I asked her, I'm like, well, where are you? I'm in the Middle East, she says.
I love it.
In India, right? Yeah, so I'm like, all right. All right, let me Skype this person. So we set up a Skype. I go, whatever. I go and I get my headphones on and my microphone and I Skype her. This person's name is Disha. So I start talking to her, get on. And it's this young girl in India and she's got a thick Middle Eastern accent, an Indian accent. And but she was Western educated and she had got an internship a couple of years ago in a direct response thing on the self-help space. There's a bunch of direct mail things, self-help, business leadership, finance, health. There's all kind of direct mail segments. Anyway, so she says, I got an internship in the direct marketing space, and I ended up writing some copy for health and self-help products. And, I was good at it. So I honed my skills and I've written a couple really quality promotions. And now I'm branching out into the financial copy space. And so I started doing research on the financial newsletter firms that were out there, Agora and Angel and Eagle, and she was naming them all. And she was like, I liked what the Outsider Club was saying, and I liked some of the promotions. So I decided to send you that email. And I was like, well, fuck, where do I sign? I was like, you got me sold already with all that initiative. I was like, come on, let's do the damn thing. And so she was like, this is what I charge. And I was like, well, this is what I pay. We hammered out a deal on the phone, and her name is Disha, and she's writing me a newsletter promotion. And that's the most positive story I could think of for the week.
Her name was Disha?
Yeah.
Welcome to the team, Disha. And it's funny because when you started that story, I was going to ask you, did you find out what neighborhood she was from? Did you make sure that, she came from a disadvantaged background? Did you make sure that, this and that? But, wow. Well, if that doesn't fucking inspire you people to get off your ass and go do something productive this week, I don't know what will. That was beautiful.
Beautiful.
Thronies. They're pissed.
Oh, well, because look. Because
you're pissed too. I love it.
No, I'm pissed because they're pissed because everybody wants a goddamn handout these days, and everybody wants everything to be their way without doing a damn thing to get it. So you know what? If you want Game of Thrones to have a different ending, then you write the Fire and Ice books, and you get an HBO contract, and you make the fucking series.
I like it. How'd you feel about the episode? Now that I got you all upset.
I thought it was good. We're off the script now. So what happened is they
Spoiler alert. I guess we're supposed to say that now. The week before the last episode. That's I'm gonna finally catch on here.
I sound like some Thrones analyst, and I'm not. I'm not like thoroughly entrenched in the show. I don't dissect it. I haven't read the books. I just like the show. But at this point, we're beyond where the books are, because the guy's not done writing the books. So the show people have nothing to go on. So they're making it up, and that's why people that are pissed, because they read the book and they said, well, it shouldn't have gone this way, etc. Well, fuck you. But what happened is. What I told you, Daenerys was going to King Landing to fuck shit up, and she fucked a lot of shit up. Yeah, she burned some innocents, and you know what? Those innocents maybe shouldn't have supported Cersei for this whole entire time. So, we can take this full circle. The people that are just sitting on their asses in America, maybe now's the time to get up and off your keister before you come and get burnt by a dragon.
I like it. So, are we excited for the finale? The finale's this weekend, right?
The finale is this weekend. Basically, everyone had Daenerys, the dragon girl. You know who I'm talking about. People know who Daenerys.
Yeah.
They had her built up as the queen, and she just did some hardcore genocide in the last episode. She burnt hundreds of thousands of women, kids. Man, she fucked up the whole city, and because after they had surrendered, basically, because she was pissed. And hey, but look, it's not real. First of all, it's fiction, so let's not get too back up in. And second of all, it's very well done fiction, because people are saying this was out of the blue. She was supposed to be a benevolent character. She was supposed to be, the good witch or whatever. But no, like, the show was well done. There was much foreshadowing in previous seasons that she wasn't as good as you may have thought. She had burned some people before who had bent the knee to her, offered their loyalty to her. And so this wasn't out of the blue. There was proper foreshadowing, which you have to do in fiction. And no, I think it's well done. I will say it's a bit done in haste, because we're out of time, right? I mean, fuck, the last episode is this weekend, and we got to tie everything up. So, I mean, that just plays into it. They had to, I won't say rush, but all the storylines, et cetera, had to be tied up. So you kind of feel that a little bit. But as far as getting it redone, get a life.
I like it. Well, good stuff. I may actually watch the finale just to be able to carry a halfway intelligent conversation about the last episode. You mentioned it being water cooler talk. It absolutely is everywhere I go, and I mean everywhere I go. So might get together with some friends and catch that here this Sunday.
Excellent. It's a long weekend, which I forgot until today. So happy Memorial Day. Thank you for your service, and get some grilling in and drink a couple beers.
Thank you for your services. Correct. Happy Memorial Day. You all will listen to this on Monday, so happy Memorial Day today. Have a great week. Mr. Hodge, anything else you'd like to add? It's been spirited. It's been fun. It's been informative as always.
I am still just hoping that this meatless Beyond Meat company is the top of the 10-year bull market, because it would just be the most poetic shit in the world for me ever.
I love it. You guys have a great week. Be nice to each other. Be nice to yourselves. No stock of the week this week. We're going to skip it. And go look at Almaden and go look at Hydro 66 again. Both of those are pretty compelling, considering the path forward and the assets in place. So that's it. Episode 19 of Bizarro World. Thanks for listening, everybody.
I'm going to go take some meat out of the freezer.
Cheers.